Phoenix vs. Raven was an emotional ride, and by that I don't mean the episode, but the matchup. At first I was like, yeah, it's neat, but I'm not too invested. But as time went on, I realized, oh shit, this is a red hair versus purple hair matchup, and those are like my two favorite hair colors. Then I realized, oh god, Raven has purple hair, a black outfit, a dry monotone vocal delivery, and trouble controlling her emotions. She's literally me, but a woman. She's Femis' Bloodreich. That means I can say I'm in Fortnite! And you know, I actually managed to get myself excited for this episode. I know, a fight between two characters I don't have much connection to that I just really didn't think was that interesting. Beyond like one sick-ass blog that vanished into the goddamn ether. I was so interested in seeing the mesmerizing visuals, how they'd tackle the convoluted history of the Phoenix, how they'd improve on the lacking versus side of Raven's episode, the last one at least, what cool elements they could put into the fight, and how awesome the editing of the analysis would be. So let's start there. Yeah, the editing in this episode is kinda... I don't want to say anything too harsh, I'm just gonna stop the sentence there. It's suboptimal. It's a lot of the same. Here's the normal background, and here are some unedited comic pages, not even panels, sometimes just like whole pages, sliding across the screen, rarely with the embellishments that I'm used to from Death Battle. And that is a problem, because these scans are only on screen for a short amount of time, so making sure it's just what's important and what's necessary so it's easy to digest is important, more so than just, here's a whole goddamn page you have to pause to read through to get the information you need. Now don't get me wrong, I wouldn't criticize the editing in almost any other Versus show, but Death Battle has a precedent. I don't think it's wrong to point out when they're not up to their own standards. If we go back to the last Marvel vs. DC episode, Hank Pym vs. Raymond Butterfly, we can see some of the embellishments I'm talking about that make these analyses more dynamic. Obviously the big one is animation of the comic panels. Stitch vs. Rocket even had this, and that episode was another where I wasn't sold on the editing for. But Ant-Man vs. Raymond had it as well. Even when it looked a little stupid like Raymond's shuffle walk, at least that's memorable, that looks funny, and it's not as repetitive as just showing the entire page on top of the default Death Battle analysis background wobbling a bit. Other elements used to enhance the analysis, just even exclusively looking at Raymond's analysis because I think it's funny to do so, is cutting out characters from panels and shifting them to look more dynamic on screen, taking pieces that are relevant from the comic panels that are relevant, namely cutting out the characters and directly necessary quotes and putting only them on screen so that there is not an overload of visual stimulus. Small animations like the meteor falling from the sky and transitions with zooms and fast blurs, rotation at high speeds so you don't notice the point where one panel becomes the next, makes things look really smooth and flow well, even when each panel is animated in some way. Pieces of panels raised up like they're in a pop-up book and animated to show what's happening, alongside the necessary and relevant text boxes to show what they're talking about. These are all techniques that are really good at making these analyses look so much more visually stimulating. And the kicker is that all these tricks and techniques used to make the analysis so visually interesting are present within just the first 30 seconds of Raymond's analysis. Basically none of that is present in this one. It's all very samey, it's usually just entire pages slide on screen then slide off while shaking. There's no time to read the important text because all the text, including the stuff that's not important to what's being said, is present, and isn't emphasized by zooming in on what's important, blurring what's not important, or just cutting out the necessary text box and only using that. I can picture in my head how awesome this analysis could look, especially with how awe-inspiring the Phoenix can look sometimes, and it really disappoints me. This episode was definitely not edited by my goat DJ Tiki. And I hate to say that Raven's analysis isn't any better. Of course, like these issues I said are all just issues with the editing. The analysis of Phoenix, at least, is not terrible from a writing standpoint. I really like how they began with the elements of the mythological Greek Phoenix. There's so much history with the Phoenix across mythologies and religion and what it represents, it's amazing. Like we all know about the Greek Phoenix, right? First mentioned to our knowledge in Hesiod's Precepts of Chiron, when talking about the age of nymphs and children of Zeus. A chattering crow lives now 9 generations of aged men, but a stag's life is 4 times a crow's, and a raven's life makes 3 stags old, while the phoenix outlives 9 ravens. But we, the rich-haired nymphs, daughters of Zeus the Aegis holder, outlive 10 phoenixes. It's used as an amazing frame of reference. A phoenix is 9 times, 3 times, 4 times, 9 times the ages of man. And from what I could gather, the life expectancy of ancient Greece men was like 37 to 42 years. So taking the high end would mean that the children of Zeus could live for 408,240 years, which is insane. But there's even more amazing history to the Phoenix. Herodotus in the 5th century wrote of the Egyptians having their own phoenix, which we believe to refer to the Bennu, a solar bird. Difficult to peg because we aren't sure how much of the phoenix influenced the Bennu and vice versa, but essentially the Bennu was a self-made being that helped in the event of Zep Tepi, a name for the Egyptian creation myths, or sometimes just the void of nothingness they believe predated everything. Bennu was the Ba of Ra, or the part of Ra's soul that represented his personality, and he allowed the actions of Atum, which is awesome because Atum is likely the namesake of the goated Pharaoh Atem from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. What does Bennu have to do with X-Men? Well, you see, nothing. But Bennu is referred to by multiple titles, such as the immensely badass He Who Came Into Being by Himself and Lord of Jubilees, making it all come full circle with the X-Men, just like a phoenix. Oh, I didn't even mention like the Persian Simorg, or the Hindu Garuda, or the Turkish Konrul, or the Chinese... Anyway, so I'm pleased to say I also enjoy some of the jokes. I can't say they were laugh out loud funny, but bullying Beast and Jean's former dumbass name was worth a bit of air out the nose. And shitting on the stupid Dark Phoenix isn't Jean retcon is always appreciated. Speaking of jokes, this episode had 2 that I'd almost consider bangers back to back. I mean, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say they're knee-slapping funny, but they made me laugh. So, they were funny to me! Just the pause and bagpipes to address that during the fucking waiting period of this episode, Jean had managed to die again is just great. Then there's the cutaway. It wasn't as funny as I remember, because I didn't notice the first time watching that they actually already lead into the joke of Jocelyn having the Phoenix Force. I thought it was just, man, the Phoenix Force is wild! Our resident comic book nerd would agree. Isn't that right, Jocelyn?
I shall burn your meager worlds to cinders before the all-consuming fires of Tifareth!
Cool, thanks, Jocelyn! As opposed to, like, giving away the joke that Jocelyn would be possessed right before the joke of her showing up possessed, but it's not so bad. That wasn't the funny part to me. The funny part was how much Wiz and Boomstick don't react to the whole situation. You know, instead of, like, the normal, oh, that's not good, it was just ignored entirely, and I like that. Also, maybe it's just me, but Void Falcon sounds like a way cooler name than Phoenix Force. Might just be because I'm a fan of the Void Dragon from Warhammer 40. Phoenix's analysis is solidly written. I don't really find most of the versus stuff that interesting, which might be because of the editing. It didn't feel like it was emphasized very much, like with the sheer impact of what was happening, the way episodes like Scarletana do. But it covered Jean's story well enough, especially how it ribbed on the really dumb parts in a funny way. I can mostly say that I'm happy that I got some enjoyment out of the jokes. Raven's analysis included the Mace Windu hand mirror, which is based. But I'm just gonna say it, this might be my hottest take of the season so far, or even across the whole, just across the whole season. This might remain my hottest take throughout the season, but I genuinely get more enjoyment out of Raven's analysis in Versus Twilight. Now, I understand most people are gonna disagree with me on that, which is fine. I'm not exactly going around parading Raven versus Twilight as the pinnacle of Death Battle, the absolute top of the top. But, I mean, that would be really fun to do so. But, like, that episode has more of the dynamic comic panel editing where they'll, like, cut out a relevant panel and... Panel? That's not a word. Where they'll cut out a relevant panel, sometimes they'll zoom in on a relevant quote and not just slap a whole ass page on screen and leave it at that. I mean, they still do that sometimes because, like, this is an earlier season. But it's definitely not as frequent as in Versus Phoenix. I also like the jokes more, at least a few of them, like the stealing from his boss joke or them mocking and nobody gets a proper ending in DC. Got a bit of a chuckle out of me. And it definitely felt like they had better pacing with that one and just a better coverage of Raven's story. Sure, the new episode actually fucking brings up the whole Teen Titan guys at the point where it should be brought up, but the old episode felt like it covered Raven's falling to the darkness and rising back out of it better. With the exception of Gold Raven, I think that the new episode did that a bit better. And I don't know, something about the new episode's pacing just doesn't feel right to me. And I felt like the feats in the old episode had more impact with how they were emphasized, which may just come down to vocal delivery. They really play up how impressive fucking sitting and building level feats are in Versus Twilight, while in Versus Phoenix it kind of felt more like they were going, oh, and she fought Spectre, who can threaten all of reality, by the way. Also, the kilowatt hours feat is so fucking funny. Again, this is probably an incredibly white-hot take, but I can attribute a lot of my issues to the editing more than the writing, and I don't know, this is how I feel, it's not changing. The cutaway gag was somewhat amusing, but if you're wondering what geese, not gooses, why did Boomstick of all people say gooses? He's the one who got all anal about... Anyway, if you're wondering what geese represent, well, in ancient Egyptian mythology, the creator goose, also known as the Great Honker, as well as this here, which is a name that I refuse to say out loud because it will get me cancelled, is sometimes considered to have laid the world egg from which the earth and sun were spawned. However, I have seen a lot of debate over this, and people generally argue over the meaning of this goose and its connection to the deity Geb. But we do have images of a divine bird, often considered a goose, that being probably a Nile or Egyptian one. This creator goose is sometimes synonymous with Ra himself, the highest god generally in Egypt, though obviously, with all the different periods of Egyptian culture, he isn't the highest all the time. As such, the goose can represent things in Egypt such as fertility, prosperity, sometimes even death and resurrection, which is really interesting to think about. This is of course only looking at it from an Egyptian mythology point of view. I've seen some sources claim that in Native American belief, the goose can represent those who seek spiritual enlightenment, ambition and perseverance personified, but I can't find any concrete sources on that, so don't take my word for it. Anyway, in no way do they represent assholes. Boomstick, you may have a degree in poultry science, but not in poultry anthropology, my friend. Anyway, yeah, disappointing on the analysis, but what about the fight? The biggest thing about this fight to me is that visually it is absolutely stellar. Pun! The backgrounds look so visually amazing, the sprites are rigged so fucking well, and the effects, oh my god, the effects! Shall I run down the list? The Soul Self looks phenomenal, and so does the Phoenix. The animation is so smooth and gorgeous, the clash of a dark bird that engulfs everything in blackness, and the light of this flaming, feathery freak is so visually stimulating. I really like how the interior of the mansion here looks, it's rendered just amazingly. The way the darkness engulfs it looks fantastic, and the fire of the Phoenix burning away the shadow is beautiful. The fucking... I don't know what this is, it's like another galaxy like within Raven's mind or something, it looks amazing. And the Phoenix rising up is mesmerizing. This is the only shot that I wanted from this fight that I actually got, and it looks stellar. Phoenix launching Raven through moons and no-selling this moon hitting her both look fantastic, and Golden Raven coming out of her dead, desolated body looks really nice. This transition from hand-drawn to sprite is smooth as shit and looks great. Raven's purified soul here with the rings looks really pretty, and the charge up and firing of Phoenix's giant fuck-off fire beam is beautiful. But not as beautiful as the explosion from Raven's powers, and the just fucking unabashedly gorgeous looking bit of Phoenix trying to defend herself. Like, the Phoenix, the effects, even these fucking balls! I mean, I love these fucking balls! The whole ending is gorgeous in every sense of the word. Just, holy shit, from beginning to end, this is a visual treat! I mean, it's not perfect, of course. It'd be wrong of me to pretend like everything in this looks better than anything else in the history of ever. Like, I'm not feeling the dildo pillars here, the fireball green screen flying out and crashing into more obvious and ill-fitting green screen fire isn't great. This just looks goofy, but admittedly that's at least funny. Something about this front-on Phoenix shot looks weird to me. I can't quite put my finger on it, and it's not an issue I have with any other front-on shot. And something about the moon just doing this with the jeans looks weird to me. It doesn't pass the vibe check. Nor does the frame rate dip here that I don't get. I mean, I get it's slow motion, it's meant to look dramatic, but it doesn't. It just looks really dumb. But like, these are all small potatoes compared to the rest of this fight looking fucking stunning. Easily one of the best looking episodes of Death Battle. That's the end of the sentence, there's no more to that sentence. Alongside that, audibly it's great. Aside from some weird sound design for the initial bird clash, I have no issues. Kira Buckland reprises Raven from her last episode and does a great job again. I don't think she really sold the feral anger side of Raven as well as last time, but I mean, she does not get ferally angry in this one, so yeah, no shit. Aside from a kind of weak sounding darkness take you that felt a bit off from how I'm used to hearing it, every delivery was pretty great. Corey, is it Petite or Petit? I don't know. Corey Pettit comes back for the first time since Mitsuru, and this time the redhead dies horribly, but still gets a pretty good voice. I don't dislike any of the deliveries. And also, I really like Forevermore. Like, aside from, again, just having a fucking exceptional name, like, that's 3 goated names for tracks in a row. Fucking ace. I don't know why, but I really like the track. It's awesome. I also like the setup. We aren't explicitly being told that Raven is having a premonition, but it's implied enough that it makes sense when a woman shows up on fire. She's like, bitch, you wanna have a go? Fucking ace, mate, yeah! The start is written with a very corny tone, but it feels kind of right out of a classic comic book or comic book cartoon. And one thing I really like about the writing of this episode is how they did the transformations. Well, some of them, Dark Raven kinda just happens. I think the way the last Raven episode had her come out as a result of Twilight's emotional manipulation backfiring on her was way more clever than just, she flew through a building so she go mad. But like, her bisecting Jean and that forcing the Phoenix Force to take over to regenerate the damage and turn her into Dark Phoenix, then Dark Phoenix purifying Raven in an attempt to strip her of her power, only to give Raven back control and allow Golden Raven to show up, leading to her performing what she considers an act of kindness by taking the pain away from Phoenix, but that's just allowing Jean to access the form of the White Phoenix of the Crown because she's no longer under control of the Dark Phoenix and reaching her full power. It's cool. Oh, and then Raven kind of just offhandedly grabs her rings, which isn't even immediately obvious because you can't see the rings until she's wearing them under all these effects. Peter Griffin pose though, let's go. Anyway, aside from the rings and Red Raven, they're all super smart with great progression. At least in concept. In execution, I can't help but feel like Phoenix purifying Raven was a bit awkward. She just grabs her and Raven does nothing while Phoenix holds her to say equip. Like, okay, evil Raven I guess was polite enough to let her finish, sure. Because that's what Raven does. That said, it's literally my only issue with these scenes. I can buy Raven thinking she'd win with that attack and being taken aback. I can buy Phoenix also thinking she'd win with her attack, given, you know, she fucking kills Raven only to be taken aback when Raven's like, I'm not really that dead. And I can also see Phoenix not even noticing the rings called to Raven while she's busy transporting them to the cum room. Also, this is the first episode where the character who gets fucking killed and comes back actually wins. Because, like, Hulk dies and then dies again, and then Link dies and then died again, and then Alucard died and then died and then died and then died and then died again, and then Darkseid died and then died and then died and then died again. And Eobard and Zamasu don't fucking count. But Raven dies and just, she's fine. But yeah, I'm not too sold on a lot of other stuff, I guess. Like, the progression is really good, and they did use a good amount of powers, which is great, but for as good as it was, there was a point where it felt like it was just noise. Like, I remember the cool bit in the mansion, which ended up not meaning anything at all. I remember the cool bit in the White Hot Room, which is essentially just Phoenix shoots a fire and then Raven says nuh-uh and instantly wins. And I remember the transformations, though none of them were really that great. Like in terms of like grand scale, like the best one I guess is probably Gold Raven. But a lot of what happened between them kind of just ended up not sticking with me. So don't get me wrong, I enjoyed myself and this whole fight was gorgeous to watch. But I'm probably not going to remember most of it after the next episode. Also, Phoenix is kind of just an asshole. Right after she purifies Raven and then Raven purifies her, she just decides, oh, you know what, fuck this bitch, I'm a killer anyway. Like, okay, Phoenix, you deserve the die. That said, I really do like the death. It looks great with Phoenix struggling and failing to protect itself, and then Raven simply blowing out the little flame. The last flicker of the Phoenix's life force within the blackness of its scorched white room. It's really nice. I do tend to forget that the fight actually ends with Raven teleporting back and landing home though. I kinda wish it ended with just the blowing out of the flickering fire, but I also get that some people would be confused. How did Raven get out of the White Hot Room? I don't get it. Yeah, so I understand. I don't know, the fight is undeniably gorgeous, but I do have to say I feel nothing to a lot of what happens. The power interactions are cool at points, the transformations are cool, there is a lot here. I would probably rank it above Ant-Man vs. Raymond if we looked only at fights. And above Killua vs. Misaka if we were looking only at visuals. But man, that analysis is not helping this episode. There are even flash frames, which they're not a big deal in the slightest. Like, I don't want you to pretend like I'm going, oh my god, like there's one frame of this scene continuing to the next shot before it goes to the next bit they edit in. What a bad episode. No, it's not a big deal. It's just like a sign that this episode is not quite up to the same level of quality as the others in terms of editing. It's not a huge criticism, it's just indicative of what's happening. Also, why does this episode not have the usual whiz and boomstick animated segment at the end? What's that about? I mean, the conclusion is a little weird. They say Trigon compared to Phoenix, but they pegged him at Universal at best, and like, they don't say how strong Mixie is when they scale him to him. I don't know, it's weird. They do say Raven with the rings of my ass cheeks can match Spectre, who threatens all of reality, but I don't know, all of reality doesn't have the same impact of all of creation they say like earlier actually in that analysis. It doesn't feel like it matches up to Old Man Phoenix, who is not the best host of Phoenix and also isn't in the White Room, both things they mention, stopping the end of all Marvel Comics. Not that I think that they're wrong by their own logic, the unkindness was pegged at able to wipe out all of creation, which I'd say is on par with what they said for Phoenix, but that didn't even get mentioned in the conclusion. Not to say the conclusion is bad, it's whatever, but it was a bit weird the first time watching through that unkindness didn't get mentioned when that was the only thing in Raven's analysis that felt like it was on par with Phoenix. Oh, and the next time is Guts vs. Dimitri. So Phoenix vs. Raven definitely was a good episode. I like it a shit ton from a visual standpoint in the fight. The fight was absolutely stunningly beautiful in almost every single sense. The effects, the voice acting, the rigging, the background, all was drawn, performed, animated, and rendered to near perfection. It has some really good and clever writing, and felt like it used the characters probably better than previous episodes of this type had in the past. But it is bogged down by what I consider the worst analysis segments of the season so far. The choreography is just in general for a lot of it, and it didn't stick with me too much, and it's just not super interesting overall. I still really liked it, but I can't say it's one of my favorites. I did win the fight though, so you know, pretty great. Okay, recording this after the fact at too early in the morning. I gave the episode another watch since, like, I recorded all that. And, you know, paying a bit more attention, and looking beyond how nice it looks visually, I noticed a few more things that did irk me a bit. Things that, other people, I'm pretty sure, would have noticed it before me, because I was distracted by how pretty the fight was. But once the aura of how good it looks wore off, some of the underlying problems began to stick out to me. Like how all the stuff I really enjoyed in the fight was mostly Raven when it came to abilities. Phoenix kind of didn't do a whole lot. Like, yeah, I get the Phoenix is mostly known for boom, fire, fuck you, but after they brought up all the powers that Phoenix actually has, I was interested in seeing what they could do, but she doesn't really use any of them. Like, Raven busts out telekinesis, she gets into Phoenix's head, fucks with her mind, she conjures up her stupid sword, she freezes time, creates shield, absorbs Jean's energy, and continues fighting as a soul after her body is killed, and does a big thunder shot to kill Jean. Jean kind of just does, like, fire, and that's about it. Like, she does make clones and does BFR them into the cum dimension, but that's really all she does. I know that is, like, the Phoenix thing, but it's more noticeable to me when they actually really point out the full extent of what the Phoenix is capable of. Not that I, like, expected, like, mass reality warping shit, because that's not really what they do, but I do feel like Phoenix drew the short straw. A lot like Wanda when she fought Zatanna, the likable DC girl carried the fight and used the majority of the demonstrated abilities against the angry, screaming Marvel girl who didn't do as much. It's not that they didn't do literally everything. I have to bring this up every time I mention when a character doesn't do so much that people go like, what, do you expect them to do everything? No. Raven didn't do everything she can do, but I still think they did enough for her and made it a very solid showing. Jean just not only didn't do anything particularly interesting, but also didn't have many, like, really memorable things beyond, like, the mind exploding out of Raven's darkness bullshit. Jean was not up to much. I also do have some grievances with the ending. It probably wasn't intentional, but the implication that Raven just had the rings of Uranus on her body the whole time, and that the fucking instant she puts them on, she one-shots White Phoenix by sharting violently, kind of gives off the impression that the entire goddamn time she could have instantly won against Jean if she just, like, started trying it all. Like, I don't think they said she couldn't use the rings unless she was in that golden form, did they? I don't think they said that. Maybe I missed it, but it does come across like the only reason Jean had a chance in this fight was because Raven was either too nice or too stupid to use her fucking instant win rings. And about the ending, I got too distracted by how gorgeous this shot is here to notice that not only does Phoenix's big fuck-off fire attack have literally 10 seconds to hit Raven and just doesn't, but it vanishes in the very next shot. Where did it go? Were Charles and Scott literally channeled into Phoenix, but then they realized they were rooting for Raven like everyone else and they just abandoned her to let Raven win? It's so weird to me. Not only does the blast not hit Raven, but it straight up disappears. It's like, now that the wow factor of how good the animation looks is gone, there is, like, one overarching problem that's kind of irksome, and then some major concerns I have with the ending that do take a bit away from it and retroactively make the fight worse to me. This is what we call, like, looking beyond the surface, and, like, the surface was so pretty on this fight, I kind of just looked at it, and didn't look any deeper, which is my bad. But yeah, the episode still looks really nice and still has a lot of good properties to it. It's got more problems than I thought initially, and you know, it's fine. It's a fine episode. It's got a lot of good stuff in it, but it's really carried by how much the animators popped off for making things look as beautiful as they could. Yeah, that's all I have to say. And so we come to the end of another review, this one for Phoenix vs. Raven. The irony is not lost on me that I said I was super excited for, like, the analysis and not for the fight. And then it ended up that this is one of the episodes where it was, like, the opposite, where the thing I was really excited for ended up being kind of lame, and the thing I wasn't excited for ended up being pretty alright. I know that, like, for a lot of people, usually they end up liking the fight way more than the analysis. For me, like, it's a balancing act with episodes. Like, the reason, or big reason, that Chosen Born and Veda Obito are, like, so high up there for me is because they have both a great analysis and great animation. So yeah, it is a bit funny, especially because, like, the thing I explicitly said I was looking forward to was seeing how they edit, like, and bring those Phoenix comic panels to life, and then they just decided, let's not do that at all. And I really don't want to make it come up like I'm bullying the editor of this. I don't know who edited this episode. I'm certain this might just be a result of, like, time crunch. Maybe they just didn't have the time to put in that extra work, or Maybe they didn't care enough about these characters the way most of the community didn't care enough about them, and they realized most people probably wouldn't care. Which I kind of want to say fair enough, or fair play on that, but, you know, it did affect my enjoyment of the overall episode. That's how I know a lot of people love this episode, and that's completely okay. Why not, if you love this episode, go tell me why in the comments, and just express how much you love the visuals, because it's got to be because of the visuals, because those visuals are, I think about them all the time. That shot of, like, the Phoenix rising up, the things I remember about this fight are just all how nice stuff looks, as opposed to what actually was happening. But yeah, so you tell me what you think down below. Tell me why you think Phoenix should have won, because God, I know a lot of yous disagree with the result, but I got the prediction correct, fuckers. That's a what? How many episodes have been? Six in a row, I think. Raymond, Chosenborn, Killsucker, Stitch. Yep, 6 in a row. And hey, if you want to support me, you can support me on Patreon. Thank you to everyone scrolling by, absolute legends. I mean, not all of you are in the not legend tier, but that doesn't mean you're not legends. Anyway, that just means you're not legends, and not legends is not a tier. The whole, like, not naming scheme on my channel gets really annoying sometimes. So, yeah. The moon is really, like, big and yellow right now, and I gotta go out and have a look at that, so let's make this quick. If you support me on Patreon, you can go access my Patreon-only Discord, where you can make me say really stupid things. And let's see what stupid things there are. Biff, I already gave you the GIF in the video. Extravagantly. I'm not reading this out, okay? Though I kind of do want to sing Too Many Cooks. But I can't sing. I had to say it. I'm not doing that. I cannot do an impression like of ERB Lincoln. I will put this on screen though. I mean, you know what, Ty? That is true. You cannot build stairs on a broken pillar, otherwise you risk consequences. Hashtag birdup indeed. I'm just gonna say birdup. Now, Jaff, what exactly am I supposed to glean from this image? Do you want me to just go, ugh? Shout out to Biffweed and his non-death battle related content? I almost don't need to anymore. Like, his Mario Kart video, I forget which one it is, which track ranking it was, the latest one, has done amazing numbers. Like, go off, Biffweed. That's great. Go check it out. Boy, the death battle debunked crowd is sure gonna be raving about the outcome of this one, huh? Yeah, you're right. Phoenix rock.
What if that's not right, Boomstick?
That's an awful fucking Shadow impression.
Beauty man, not Phoenix. Phoenix is Bird Lady. All confused.
We all are gathered here today to mourn the loss I could friend and hero to all. Oh, she's back already. That was like reading fucking a live chat. This is a laughing matter. I could use some get better soon words for my mother. If that's true, and I'm gonna trust it's true, then get better, Matty's mum. Yeah, and get better soon. And if whatever's going on, I really hope that your mother gets better soon. If there's really something going on, I've had to deal with like the concerns for my own mother lately as well, and I love my mother to death, and I would go to the ends of the earth to make sure she's okay. And I really hope your mother, whatever she's suffering from, whatever's happening, recovers as soon as possible. And we just like transition directly into just an image of Aizen welcoming you to the sex dungeon. Fucking hell. I'm not reading that out, because screw Aizen.
Hello there. It's over, Cloud. I have the high ground.
You underestimate my power. Don't try it.
Today is the day where we go and watch Barbie. We have waited years for this moment, and now it's time we strike. This will be our only chance to take out the Decepticons. The movie premieres in an hour. Autobots, transform and roll out! Such a fool you are, Prime. I bought all of this seat, so only I will be there at the premiere.
I've watched the film once, I don't remember Scourge's voice very well. Yeah, that's all of them. That was actually less funny than I thought it would be. I gotta ask Biff. Maybe... Just drop my phone, why don't I? Maybe Biff has something funny to say. Opa Chunga style! I'm gonna fucking kill myself. I'm just gonna I'm gonna take a fucking Gatling gun. I'm just gonna deep throat it and just eviscerate my insides. And you know what? It is going to feel more pleasant to have that go through my throat than the vibrations that produced what I just said just then. Don't go subscribe to Biffweed. What a douche.